Greetings, sisters and brothers. We're back, and we're joined by Sister Shanieri Norman and Baba Kimbizi Merritt. Are you on?
Ron. Greetings.
All right.
Greetings, family.
Greetings.
This is Brother Kimbizi. Can you hear me, DJ?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear. Sister Shay, you're on, right?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, great. Well, the floor is yours, and it's been a pleasure to serve, and I'll stand by and listen and chime in if I have any questions.
Okay, thank you so much. And before we get started, big thank you to you and Baba Hekima for that last hour. That was very powerful. I'm hopeful that those who are listening in on the internet or by phone, hopefully you got some nuggets that you didn't necessarily have before in reference to ULU. So as we move into this 10 o'clock hour again, my name is Shanieri, and I have the pleasure serving ULU as Vice President and Treasurer, and we're also joined by Baba Kimbizi, Byron Merritt, who serves as Treasurer. Before we actually get into the ULU 10-point appeal and plan for the new black economy, I just want to go over a couple of housekeeping matters. Number one, if you were on the call before, you're aware that we invite questions. And so what you want to do if you have a question is press 1 on your phone. We'll acknowledge that you have a question, and we will open your line. Also, please listen intently because this is member orientation and training. And so if you have a question, it may be asked by another. And, we can allow for more time for a healthy discussion, the more questions and comments that we're able to get in. So we ask you to just please pay attention. And you may want to take notes just in case you're the type of person who is discussing ULU on a regular basis with others. These points will help you to have better discussions. One, of course, you'll bring people to this call so that they can engage. But during our day, during the week, you may have discussions about ULU, and this information is just going to help you to better explain or give an understanding of ULU. So the purpose of this call for member training and orientation, again, is really for us all to get a deeper understanding of the co-op or of ULU and to get it on an ongoing basis. And it's for us to be more mindful of the unlimited possibilities, which is what we really have when it comes to uplifting us. So in the first 10 weeks of training and orientation, this is week 4, we're going to continue to discuss, again, the ULU 10-point appeal and plan for the new black economy. So for this to be as effective as possible, I'm just going to ask that we all really tune in right now. I'm going to read for us the 10-point appeal and plan that was created by Uplifting Us. Of course, we affectionately call it ULU for short. And then we'll get back into point 4 with a discussion with Baba Kimbizi. Before I start, is there anything you'd like to add at this point?
Greetings, Shay and family. No, nothing, just other than to echo your comments on how much I thoroughly enjoyed the previous hour with Baba Hekima and Brother DJ. Powerful discussion, and so I'm excited and looking forward to our conversation about point 4 of the ULU 10-point plan. So go ahead.
Okay, good. We'll dig in. And for anyone who is not or did not jump online with us in the last hour, or you just get on the call, of course, our website is www.usliftingus.com. And prior to you entering the website, what you'll see bold and bright on the very first page you come to is the ULU 10-point appeal and plan. So you can actually follow along with me. We also encourage that you print those off and share them with others. Mostly, have one for yourself and also share with others. So, again, let's just tune in. And before I start, current events and the general unrest of the times call for radical change. The following points provide practical and necessary steps for a new and positive existence for us today and for future generations. Point 1, as Black people, we take full responsibility for the economic destiny of our communities and nations. Point 2, Black persons and Black institutions, especially the Black church, join together as members in a large-scale cooperatively owned business enterprise to pool our resources. Point 3, this cooperatively owned business enterprise is reflective of our unique culture and interest in the world. Point 4, the governance and legal form of the cooperative accommodate democratic principles, one member, one vote with elected leadership. Point 5, only members of the cooperative and not the public have the opportunity to secure ownership units or equity in the business enterprise with the potential to amass billions of dollars for community development. Point 6, the cooperative focuses on opening and operating businesses in local communities that, 1, provide needed goods and services, 2, create new jobs, 3, stimulate additional business activity, and 4, yield a fair profit. Point 7, the cooperative is driven to duplicate and expand into hundreds and eventually thousands of businesses, all owned and controlled by the collective. Point 8, the net profits from overall cooperative success are used to, 1, reinvest, 2, they're used for the distribution of grants and endowments, and 3, to direct returns or dividends to member owners of the cooperative. Point 9, the large-scale cooperatively owned, group-owned business enterprise functions as a catalyst and central element in building and sustaining the new Black economy, one that gives power to our people. Point 10, Usliftingus Economic Development Cooperative LLC serves as the aforementioned model. So as a special note, it says here, these 10 points form the basis for Black economic empowerment. The security and welfare of our people starts with our determination to control the economics of our communities and nations. Black people and Black people alone hold the key to the gateway leading to their freedom, which is from the Philosophy and Opinions of Marcus Garvey, 1923. So I'll go back and repeat point 4, and then Baba Kimbizi, I'm just going to ask that we start to have a discussion about why point 4 carries so much weight. So again, point 4, it says the governance and legal form of the cooperative accommodates democratic principles, one member, one vote with elected leadership. So again, why does that carry so much weight?
Well, first of all, Shay, when we say one member, one vote, what we're saying is that while one member might own multiple shares of cooperative shares worth tens of thousands of dollars, and another member might only own one co-op share worth $1,000, they each have one vote when it comes to making decisions about how the cooperative will be run. So the amount of wealth that both of them owned is equalized, and both of them stand on common ground, brother to brother, brother to sister, sister to sister. One person, one vote. True democracy. And that's the first principle and point of understanding why and how powerful this form of economy is for our people. In other words, it takes the power of money out of the equation and limits it to one person, one vote. So all brothers and sisters, all members of the cooperative stand on equal footing. So to me, that's a very profound notion. And what it does is it makes the society fair and equal.
Mm-hmm.
The second, go ahead.
No, go ahead, please.
the second point that is embedded in that is that this is an ancient African philosophical point of the equality of people in African society. I was looking at some information that Chancellor Williams in his book, Destruction of Black Civilizations, shared when he talked about the ancient idea of democracy in ancient African civilizations. And the point that he was making is that long before Europe even existed, African people had organized their societies to be very democratic, based on their system of lineage. In other words, they saw themselves as kinfolk, related to each other. They shared a common ancestor. And because of that, they were interconnected and interdependent. The second piece that was involved in the way they organized their societies was that they had what they called age set or tradition grouping, so that each, depending on how old you were, like one age group would be, say, all the children from age 1 to 12. The next age set would be 13 to about 18. Then the third set would be 19 to about 28. The fourth set would be 28 to about 40 or 45. And then the last age set would be 45 and above. And so that each one of these age sets implied that that each group, as it got older and older, had more wisdom, more maturity, more experience, and could provide leadership to the entire community or society. And it kind of gave a formula that age plus intelligence plus wisdom equal leadership potential, and accorded deference to the elders. So that was kind of the foundation or the floor of these societies that were egalitarian, that distributed the wealth of the land and the people, so that everyone had the basics of society. They had food, they had clothing, they had shelter, they had access to the land and could farm and could provide for themselves as a given principle in the way they organized their lives together.
Okay. So two points I want to make, or just two references I want to give to everything you just explained, is one, the essence of kinfolk, the essence of familyhood, and two, very simply, is the essence of equality, loudly to both of those references, correct?
Absolutely. And that's what we've been saying for some time in ULU, that Ujamaa is familyhood that builds an economy. So there, again, is that idea of kinship. And because we are kin one to another, we take care of one another. We lift one another. We support each other. And we share in our gifts and in our resources. And in the abundance of what the earth has provided for us, to go back to a comment that Brother Hakima made earlier in the previous hour.
Okay. And just to go back and reference Ujamaa, anyone who's been around ULU for a month or more understands that we refer to Ujamaa on a very regular basis, because, again, that's our flavor, so to speak, of how we operate, how we relate to one another. And so anyone who now is listening in, if you don't have a good reference for Ujamaa and the meaning of Ujamaa, you can Google it. You can, of course, go to our site and dig into some of the documents there. But if you Googled it, you would basically see that Ujamaa is pretty much familyhood in Swahili, and it was a concept that was formed, or it formed the basis of what Julius Nyerere's social and economic development policies were in Tanzania. And this was after it gained its independence from Britain. This was in 1961. So if you look that up and you see that this is the way he envisioned to shape their society and the economics of their society, you'll understand the correlation. And again, Ujamaa is simply familyhood in Swahili. So, Baba Kimbizi, do you want to give any more depth to Ujamaa? Mm-hmm.
I do, but I want to go back just to one idea that Chancellor Williams shared in that book again, The Destruction of Black Civilization, in talking about these ancient African constitutions. Like he says, the first principle was the people are the first and final source of all power. So that was like their first principle in ancient African societies. The second idea was the rights of the community of people are and ought to be superior to those of any individual, including chiefs and kings. He makes that point 3, kings, chiefs, and elders are leaders, not rulers. They are the elected representatives of the people and the instruments for executing their will. And here's a powerful idea, point 4, government and people are one and the same. So, I mean, those are just some of the foundational concepts that undergirded these African societies and enabled them to live together harmoniously, to cooperate and to share their resources and to advance life for the children and for generations to come. Now, interestingly enough to me, Julius Nyerere, who you referenced, in his Freedom and Ujamaa, or Uhuru na Ujamaa, he says that first and most central of all is that under Ujamaa, man is the purpose of all social activity. The service of man, the furtherance of his human development, is in fact the purpose of society itself. There is no other purpose above this, no glorification of nations, no increase in production. Nothing is more central to an Ujamaa society than an acceptance that man is its justification for existence. And he goes on to say that his use of the term man, it means not only men, but male and female, black, brown, yellow, long-nosed and short-nosed, educated and uneducated, wise and stupid, strong and weak. All these and all of the distinctions between human beings are irrelevant to the fact that all members of the society, all the human beings who are in it, that is the purpose. They are all equal. So those are the philosophical ideas that undergird this fourth principle. The governance and the legal form of the cooperative accommodates democratic principles, one member, one vote, which ultimately means that we do have an equal society. And the last point that I'll make on that, Shay, is that these are the principles that govern the co-op. But in truth, because the co-op is the economic foundation of how we live together, not only do they govern the co-op, they govern the community or the nation itself.
That's right. That's right. Before we go any further, I would like to ask Brother DJ, are there any callers holding with any questions?
Sister Shay, I think we're good. I'll double check real quick and let you know here shortly.
Okay, and while you're checking for me, Baba Hekima, is there anything that you would like to add? Keep in mind, jump in here at any time if there's a point that you would like to add.
No, I'm enjoying the conversation and learning.
Okay, good. So I would say, very importantly, from that last discussion, you said something that we've heard throughout the generations. We've heard it said differently depending on what generation was leading the charge or leading the day. But the power rests with the people. And leaders are actually groomed, are created, follow a process that respects society, that respects equality, and elders become leaders based on wisdom, based on some other, like I said, based on the process, and they're not to be dictators. They're to be leaders.
Right. They represent the people in the truest sense of the term.
Okay. Well, I want to ask you a question. I want to paint a picture here now, because we've talked about democracy. We've talked about how it's been represented in ancient Africa. Let's contrast that with the way we hear of democracy now today, and of course we're at the height of the American political show. Let's talk about how democracy, in the sense of how it's explained here in this country and abroad in general, how does that contrast with what we've just laid out, so that individuals get, you may not have ever really, really thought about the comparison between what we're talking about right here today and what we're living in this particular country, and like I said, in other places around the world. Talk about that.
Well, that's a really interesting question, Shay, because it raises two quick examples for us to reflect on. The first one is America claims to be this great democracy, but in truth, it's a plutocracy. In other words, it's a country that is governed by the wealthy. If you're working class or poor, or even struggling to be in the upper reaches of the middle class, the truth of the matter is that the decisions are made by the people with the extreme wealth. That is the 1% at the top. They fund the candidates, they pay for the ads, they run the campaign, and the so-called political leaders are really just puppets on their strings. And that's becoming more and more clear as this current campaign season plays out. So one is this idea that America really is a plutocracy. You got to be a multimillionaire to even consider running for office, or you have to prostrate yourselves to the very wealthy in hopes that they will fund you and allow you to mount a campaign. And I think the presence of Donald Trump in the race makes that point very, very clearly, that here's a guy who doesn't read, who is wealthy though, and because of his billions of dollars, can jump in the race and run the race, say all kinds of irrational, idiotic things, and stroke that portion of the country that, for whatever reason, is frustrated and thinks that they see themselves as losing power, and so he becomes the front runner and ultimately the representative of the Republican Party, based on his billions of dollars. If he had the amount of money that the average person has in their pocket, he wouldn't even be anywhere near the stage. So,
okay.
So we see that, and so now and then the other piece, the other example is all this squabbling about what's going to happen when they get to the convention, if it had been a brokered convention, or the electoral college. In other words, the people went to the polls and voted, but yet and still, when it gets to the convention, but they're going to make some deals behind closed doors, and that's going to be the policy and the leadership that actually runs the country. So we become very clear that there's this second layer of leadership that's making decisions about how you and I and what resources are going to be available to us and how we will live. We saw that in Flint, Michigan. The elected leadership was overturned by special appointed officials because they, quote unquote, were bankrupt by the governor. And those non-elected people came in and made a decision and switched the water supply, and 100,000 people were exposed to lead poisoning, not to even think about the thousands of children that are caught up in that. So for America to be a democracy, that's a sham. And it's been brought to light how ludicrous this whole election scene is, and makes it even more clear why we have to take control of our economic destiny, which is also to say take control of our political destiny.
Right. The system is literally eating itself from the inside out. Before I get into another point, I'd like to kind of change the course just a little bit. Before I do that, I want to reference our values and ethics document, the ULU values and ethics document. Of course, if you are a member, you have this document. If you are not a member, just by requesting more information through our website, you'll have this document as well. But I just want to reference a part of the values and ethics document that speaks to point 4. It says the cooperative belongs to the people. It is a democratically operated and controlled economic institution at the base of our community in service to our people. It honors the international principles of cooperation and it honors the international principles of cooperation adhered to by all cooperatives. Voluntary and open membership, democratic member control, which is each member exercises only one vote. There are more points to follow that, but I just want to give people that reference that comes straight from the values and ethics document so that you understand how each of these documents plays a part, all the way from this foundational document to the literature that we literally pass around to one another on the streets, at events, that you can print from our website. You'll see the mission of ULU and the values and ethics running all the way through it. There's never a question about where this information is coming from or where our discussions come from. Okay, so it's rooted very, very deeply. Bobby Kimbizi, I want to talk about African consensus for a moment. Can we get into a discussion about what that looks like?
You know, we're definitely on the same wavelength. Yes, absolutely. You know, you mentioned that. We had our annual meeting back on March the 19th, and we had a wonderful example of consensus. In that too is an ancient African principle for decision making, and it ties in so beautifully with this idea of one member, one vote, and the equality of that we experience as we make decisions about important matters to the co-op. So we had some decisions to make in our last annual meeting, and it was clear that a majority of the people present were leaning towards doing it in one particular way. There was one or two people that were somewhat uncomfortable with that position. And even though we take the position of one member, one vote, and we could have voted, we could have put the matter to a vote, the votes were there to just push it in that direction. Because of the way that we practice consensus, we like to not make decisions until all parties are comfortable with the direction that we're going in. And if there's any discomfort, we listen to that very carefully, we weigh it out, and the beauty of consensus is that one person might cause the entire group to have to pause and maybe consider going in a different direction. So that consensus means that each member, because of their value as a member in our community, because they have that ability to say, let's pause here and reflect a little more length on what we're about to do, because there may be a better way of accomplishing this goal. So that means everybody has to operate at the highest level of respect and responsibility. And we saw that carried out very clearly in our annual meeting when there was some discomfort on the part of one or a couple of members, and the group just paused and had a very in-depth conversation about the points that were being made, and we actually arrived at a better decision than if we had just pushed through a vote because the numbers were there to support that earlier position. And so that's the power of consensus in conjunction with what does it mean to be a democratic community. Yes, the votes may be there to go in one particular direction, but because each person is so valuable and important in the community, every voice has to be listened to carefully and thoughtfully, yes, and even prayerfully, and so that we arrive at the best decision for the well-being of the entire community. And so that's the power that ULU is creating for us in helping us to operate not only democratically, but at the highest levels of respect we have for each other and ourselves.
Okay. And I would just ask you to say, because you've done an excellent job of laying that out for us. I appreciate the example. Of course, I remember that happening. It happens very often in our board meetings as well. That's one of the things I was thinking about when I looked at that African consensus, and I look at how we, conduct our meetings, But I do have this question for you. For someone who would listen to what you say and say, well, that sounds messy, or that sounds like it could be a lengthy process coming up with consensus. With everything that you said, what could you possibly, or, any other board member that would like to chime in, what would you say to that person?
I would say, yes, it is messy. and it can be time-consuming. And, yeah, you can't watch the clock when you're trying to sometimes handle, these kinds of questions. But at the end of the day, you come out with a decision that everybody can live with and support and run with, and so that the synergy of our group is fully expressed. I mean, you come out of there thinking, say, wow, that really pushed us to a much higher conclusion than if we had just gone with the simple majority vote. And that's part of what it means to be family, and what it means to give voice to your truth, and to stand firm for what you think is right and what is best. And what we discover is that in the dialogue of examining all sides of the issues, there are different things that surface that we might not have considered. And it does help us to come to much better decisions for the group. I've never seen it operate in a way that we spent the time and didn't come out with a better outcome. Have you?
No, I haven't. Absolutely not. And I'll tell anyone that being a part of ULU and being deeply involved, it really changes the way that you operate in every area of your life, because relationships exist, hopefully, in every area of your life. And so it really, really changes the way that you work with one another. You listen to one another, and you have regard for one another. And it's not just, a competition, who's going to come out on top. That has no basis. So for me, it just sounds like we're talking about it's time well spent, and it basically creates a strong foundation for where it is that we're going and what it is that we're building.
Another thing I think that we've seen over time is that because oftentimes the men in around the table outnumber the women, and sometimes there's only one woman at the table and several men, we find ourselves, because of consensus, allowing the woman at the table to be heard clearly and thoroughly. And oftentimes, even though the woman is outnumbered 4-1, 3-1, 5-1, oftentimes we discover that the woman's point of view is the point of view that is most beneficial for the conversation that we're having. So I say that because, for sisters who are listening on the call, we have experienced in ULU a much higher level of respect for women and a much higher level of women being able to participate equally with men. And I think that's one of the first benefits that I've witnessed as the way ULU discusses the issues that we have to make votes on, and how we've grown in our respect for women in just making sure that we're listening very carefully to that input and weighing fully the content of what is being shared.
Ashe. I was going to joke with you a bit. I really, really appreciate that comment. I was going to joke with you a bit and say I'm glad this thing is recorded. We're going to blast that all over the website that you all, or ULU, regards as women so highly. I was going to joke with you, but I can say for sure, as the representative of feminine energy on the board, that is very, very true, and I'm much appreciative of how we operate. Brother DJ, it sounded like you had a comment.
No, I was just actually clearing my throat. but I will say, going back, and that was an excellent point. But going back to what Baba Kimbizi said about consensus, I think that is extremely important in that we arrive at decisions and we're still able to preserve and even strengthen the relationship, right? Because oftentimes what can happen is that if things are not done by consensus and the decision is not the right decision, you wind up having that one person who would have been the lone holdout saying, you know what, I should have said something because I was against this from the very beginning. You know what I mean? And because that person was not given an opportunity to speak, then we missed an opportunity to not only shift the conversation, but to change the strategy to something that could have possibly worked, in our favor. You know what I mean? And so we arrive at consensus and we preserve relationships, and then even if it doesn't go right, we never have those conversations. From a negative perspective, it's about huddling up and figuring out, again, collectively, how to go about it a better way. So consensus works good for us, and like the African proverb says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
Ashe.
I was thinking as DJ was speaking that I think consensus is a very high form of democracy. It really honors this idea of each person being so important to the community.
Okay.
Ashe.
Thank you for that. Is there any call holding?
No, but what I'll do is I'll go ahead and plug that for those of you who are on the call-in side, because we've got a full bank of callers. We got a lot of people just holding and listening. If you have a question or a comment for either Shinyere or Baba Kimbizi, go ahead and push number 1 on your phone. go ahead and push 1 on your phone, and we'll open up your line for a question or a comment. Again, if you have a question for our Vice President or our Secretary, go ahead and push 1, and we'll open up your line very, very quickly. Go ahead.
Okay, and for our members who are on the line that chime in normally, please don't be shy. If you have not just a question but a comment, something to add to the conversation, we invite that. So please be mindful. So in going back, and just because I believe we're coming toward the end of the call, so I just want to go back and ask a question. We could say then that true democracy, as we've discussed it tonight, is a statement about the equality of all persons in truth, not just rhetoric. Right, Baba Kimbiji? Speak to that.
Absolutely, Shay. What it boils down to is that every life is valuable. And any economic model that places one person above another because of their money invalidates democracy, which is why the economy must be guided by the principle of one member, one vote. I think all of us have experienced in this country the deference that is paid to people who have a lot of money, whether it's in the church setting, whether it's in a fraternity or a sorority, whether it's in a community organization, when the franchise owner stands up to speak because they represent multi-million dollars worth of money, they tend to have inordinate kind of influence sometimes in our meetings. And so we have to be mindful of creating an economy that levels the playing field, that your money is not representative of your power in this organization. In this body, in this space, what's important is the content of what you're saying, the truth that you share. And on that ground, every person is truly equal to every other person. And that's what we're trying to do, is get back to a social arrangement that is really equitable, that really honors and respects the life and the worth of each person, regardless of how much money they have in the bank or how fat their roll is in their pocket.
So for the person who's looking at this and they're hearing us talk and it makes sense to them, it's logical, but because of the system that we currently live under, they may not be able to see it the way we see it. Some people, when they hear of ULU as an alternative, they think, well, how can this exist here and now? They don't think of it as something that can exist in the midst of. How do you talk to that person?
Well, I think in part it's because we have to understand that the real wealth in the society rests inside of the people. It's the people, their activity together, that generates the wealth, that makes the wealth. That's the illusion that has confused us for hundreds of years in this country. We have been sold on the idea that money is the wealth. Money is an expression of the wealth. Money is not the wealth. And the truth of the matter is that it was the black labor of our ancestors enslaved in this country that created the wealth that allowed this country to be the economic engine that it is today. All of that power that America claims for itself and parades around the world, look at how great and powerful we are, is the byproduct of 400 years of the enslavement of African bodies in this country. If you take us out of this country, there is no wealth to speak of. It was that free labor for 400 years that provided the foundation for all of this American wealth. And so we as a community have to have a breakthrough in our thinking and understand that wherever we gather, that is the source of how much wealth or however much wealth we want to generate. It comes from inside of ourselves. And what we have to do is organize ourselves in a way that our labor benefits our people, our children, and the generations yet unborn to come. We're generating wealth, but the problem is it's flowing to other communities and not flowing in a way that benefits us. And that's what ULU seeks to do, is to harness that wealth that we are generating every day that we work and redirect it back to where it's needed in our communities, our children, and the causes that we are concerned about.
Right. So what you're saying is if a person has a question about how ULU can operate while we're living in this capitalistic society, what I hear you saying is, and what I know to be true, is it behooves us to become a part of ULU and to really power ULU because of this system. So there has to be a both and. Correct?
You're absolutely right, Shay. You're absolutely. The only way we will survive is to come together and create this economic engine that we control and that redirects our wealth back into our institutions. That's the beauty of ULU. Right. The wealth is already passing through our fingers. We just have to find ways to recycle it back to all of the places and spaces where we need it. It's kind of like blood flowing through the veins of our bodies. As we've said in other metaphors, we're hemorrhaging as a community. The blood is constantly flowing out to benefit other bodies, not our own. So we have to plug those holes and recirculate our own blood so that it nourishes our own organs and muscles and tissues and et cetera.
Right. And if not for forever until our extinction, we will be at the mercy of serving others. Brother DJ, Baba Hekima, as we approach the last minutes of this hour, one, do we have any callers holding? And two, would you all like to chime in on that last point as we close?
Well, to answer the first question, we don't have any callers, but I'm certainly I certainly would like to contribute or share some closing comments. I think that this particular conversation has been phenomenal. I'm sitting back with my notes or taking notes as I listen to the level of dialogue and really the level of clarity that's coming forth, on this call, this second half of the call. Thank you so much, Sister Shinyere, Baba Kimbizi, for an exemplary expression of point number 4. I could not have, and I'm sure Baba Hekima would concur, we could not have done a better job ourselves. So hats off to the both of you, and I'm sure our members and our prospective members have become much more informed as it relates to this last hour. So thank you.
Thank you.
Ashe.
Baba Hekima, any words?
Can you all hear me?
We can hear you.
Oh, great. Well, I'm still taking notes. I'm enjoying it because, to build an institution and to be cognizant of the energy, the life force, the the values, the ethics that are part of it. See, I think sometimes we think about a co-op or about a business, and we think that it's just mechanical. It's more than mechanical. It has a spirit to it, and so I'm thankful that all of us are engaged with our members in making certain, to the extent possible, that we're building this for the future. And so again, I'm taking notes, and I don't have a lot to offer. Just thankful for these discussions, and I think in this 10-week cycle, when we come back around to this, hopefully more of our members will chime in and give us some feedback, because there is great wisdom and knowledge within our membership base as well. So thank you.
Shay,
as Baba Hekima was speaking, and I'm looking at the 10-point plan, the appeal and plan, and I don't know if you realize it, but it's laid out in a linear fashion. You follow what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
But if you think about, if we were to be able to put this in a circle, then we would really appreciate how each one of these points builds to the succeeding point, and it all folds back into itself. These are not isolated points, but they are part of a organic whole or circle that feed each other. And when we understand all 10 points as a comprehensive organic living document, it's better if we envision it in a more circular way. And I'm just blown away by the power that is inherent in these 10 points in sequence, circulating around each other, forming a circle, and even an upward spiral.
Shay and Brother Kimbizi, remember that the 10-point appeal and plan was the creation of a whole lot of people. We sent the rough draft out to just tons of people around the country, and people chimed in and criticized this point. So it was a consensus piece. It was not created by one mind. It was created by the collective.
Absolutely. And that thank you for that clarity, because as I look at it, I'm thinking that may be a new way for us to display the 10-point appeal and plan. As we close, and thank you for that, as we close, I would like to offer this very personal account, because we are family, but I'm going to tell you how ULU, it shows up many ways in my day-to-day life, but I just want to share this as an idea as to how ULU can show up in your life and should show up in your life, especially those of us who are members. I was actually going through some things I was frustrated about, as we sometimes do, and I was able to reach out to a sister who is actually miles and miles away, not even here in the States, and because she's my ULU sister, we formed a relationship on a very, very fertile ground of trust, respect, and love for one another, and she really, really helped me through some things that I was going through. And had it not been for ULU, this particular person, I'm pretty sure would have never shown up in my life. And so when we talk about principles and we talk about an enterprise that seeks to change our world, talk about it and think about it in reference to your day-to-day, those things that you actually go through on a day-to-day basis, and how ULU can affect your life. We're right at 10:57 p.m., which means we have about 3 more minutes left. Are there any callers who are holding to give a comment?
Yes, Shay, we do have a caller. We've got 8912, 8912. Caller, please state your name and where you're calling from, please. Your line is open.
Yes, this is Brother Thurman calling from Richmond, and I know that the time is short, and it has just been outstanding, the presentation, the discussion tonight, and I just want to testify, if I can shortly, that to the members and the listeners all over the planet, usliftingus and what they said. I was at the summit in March, and it was just conducted so well, and I think Shaneri have said it several times that ULU's approach to the 10-point plan, the values and ethics and everything is creating a mindset that is affecting our life, and I'm just so happy, and I just want to testify that what they're saying is absolutely true. I've been there, I've seen it. It was just so joyful to be at the meeting, at the summit, and how well things flowed, and that ULU continues to flow that way. And we've just got this has been a world-class call tonight. Just shows that our board members are world-class people that are well thought, and when they say every week before the call to come on the call, take notes, and ask the hard questions, they are prepared to answer the hard questions. And thank you so much.
Ashe, and thank you. That everybody, we know that voice. That's Brother Thurman, and also that's another example of a relationship being built as well. He called and checked on me. Knew I was going through some back issues. Called and checked on me the other day. Another person who, a relationship that wouldn't have been formed if it wasn't for ULU. So thank you all for joining tonight. We're right at 10:59. Keep in mind the website is usliftingus.com. You can find the 10-point appeal and plan there on the front page. We will be here next week, same time, starting at 9 o'clock for the introduction to ULU, and then 10 o'clock for the ULU member training and orientation. Peace and blessings.
Peace, family.
Peace.
Peace.
Fashion Emergency Hotline.
Help! I took the kids out to get a gift for Mother's Day, and now they've gone bonkers and spilt milkshakes all over themselves. How am I going to get them cleaned up and get a gift in time?
You need to get to Old Navy Stat. Now through May 19th, kids and baby clothes are up to 50% off.
50% off?
Yep, and tomorrow only, they're having a Mother's Day sale with 50% off all women's and girls' dresses, shoes, and accessories, plus $12 cardigans and $6 scarves. Get her something she'll really love.
Thank you.
Don't thank me. Thank Old Navy. Valid 5/1 to 5/19. Mother's Day sale valid 5/7. Select styles. Certain restrictions apply. See store for details. 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 Restrictions apply. See store for details.